Imagine waking up in a city where you might find it difficult to breathe after just one flight of stairs. The streets are already crowded with thousands of people. Traffic is squeezed by buses. Vendors arrange their products. Kids rush to school. Nothing seems out of the ordinary at first. However, this city is located over 4,000 meters above sea level. And this is just the start. Bolivia has a navy despite not having a coastline. An active military force that operates on rivers and Lake Titicaca, not a ceremonial group dressed in antiquated uniforms. Additionally, depending on what you mean, two cities can both claim the title of capital. The constitutional title belongs to one, the national government's actual operations take place in the other. The languages come next. Numerous indigenous nations whose customs have endured for centuries are officially recognized by Bolivia. Additionally, chewing coca leaves is still a common practice in the highlands. For many, it has nothing to do with what outsiders might think right away. It's just a part of the routine. These things don't seem to be related. Above clouds, a city, a landlocked nation with a navy, two capital letters, numerous languages. The outside world frequently misinterprets this custom. Nevertheless, people go about their daily lives as usual, waking up, going to work, raising children, shopping for food, and so on. What happens then when indigenous identity, history, geography, and contemporary life all collide within a single nation? In reality, how does a country like Bolivia operate? Stay tuned, because the most bizarre contradiction in this nation will reveal something far more profound than an unexpected fact by the end. The city is awake even before the sun reaches El Alto's streets. A woman walks outside into the chilly morning air after tightening her jacket around her shoulders. A vendor is spreading bread somewhere nearby. A bus starts to cough. A half-asleep child strolls next to a parent on their way to school. The routine doesn't seem particularly noteworthy. Then you recall your location, over 4,000 meters above sea level. The air feels different at this altitude. It is almost instantly noticed by visitors. Breathing becomes more difficult than you anticipated when you walk too quickly, climb a few steps, or carry a bag across the street. But to someone who grew up here, this is just home. People continue to rush to work. They still make a breakfast stop. When they are running late, they still squeeze into congested transit and quarrel over prices at the market. The mountains appear to be in close proximity to the city. It can be quite cold, especially in the morning. Dust is pushed through unfinished walls and along the roads as the wind swiftly moves across the open altiplano, but because the air is thin, life continues. Maybe the most bizarre thing is that 4,000 meters sounds like a harsh environment to an outsider. It's Tuesday morning for the locals. They have adapted to the long distances, the cold, the altitude, and a city that grew nearly unbelievably high above the rest of the world. And something shifts when you ride the cable car over the rooftops and observe people below opening stores, carrying groceries, and starting another typical day. The altitude is no longer just a number to you. You begin to regard it as a way of life. This doesn't make sense at first. You might be standing in an area that appears to have been largely unaffected by the modern world when all of a sudden a smartphone rings. A young man looks at a message. A woman uses her phone to make a payment. An old stone house is passed by a newer car down the road. And someone nearby is still doing something their grandparents would have recognized right away. This is the kind of scene that causes you to reconsider, because the conventional narrative is straightforward. A location must be farther from modern life, the farther it is from the world's major cities. However, the two appear to be in the same frame here. People may adhere to morning routines influenced by centuries-old customs. By the afternoon, they might be utilizing the same technology as those in Los Angeles, Seoul, or New York. Sneakers may be paired with traditional attire. Ancient structures can be connected to a fast internet. While a television plays softly in the background, a family meal can still adhere to traditional customs. Nothing has been fully substituted. It's been layered instead. And that raises an odd query. Why would people cling to customs that are no longer necessary in the modern world? The fact that they are isolated is not the only explanation. They frequently have more connections to the outside world than you might think. They observe what is evolving. They are aware of what can be found elsewhere. They don't always decide to replace what they already have, though. The contradiction becomes intriguing at that point, because the fact that the old and the new can coexist is perhaps the most surprising thing. The reason is that they weren't initially opposites for some people. And when you stop viewing the old and the new as mutually exclusive, you start to wonder what it is that people won't let go of. Sometimes the solution is right there at the dinner table. Many families choose to preserve the culture by not preparing a traditional meal. It doesn't need to be announced. Someone cleans the veggies, someone else cuts the meat. Without measuring, an elderly relative tastes the broth and adds a small amount of salt. Even though the recipe has been passed down through the generations, the evening still seems perfectly normal. Tradition is powerful because of this. It endures in little things, a particular manner of welcoming an elderly person, an item of apparel worn on a wedding day. During a celebration, music unexpectedly fills the courtyard. Youngsters who watch their grandparents cook may go on to do the same thing years later, without giving it any thought. In a crowded market, you might observe the same pattern. People haggle, they chuckle. A neighbor from across the street is recognized by someone. Food is wrapped in paper and delivered by a vendor. A teenager is standing next to an elderly woman who is wearing a piece of clothing that has been a part of the community for many years as she browses through a phone. No one pauses to clarify the contradiction. They just experience it, and maybe that's why some customs endure while others do not. They are not on display behind glass or kept alive for tourists. They are beneficial. They unite families. They commemorate significant occasions. They serve as a reminder of their origins. Why do people still engage in this behavior today? Because sometimes upholding a tradition is more about understanding who you are in the present than it is about clinging to the past. However, tradition is not cost-effective. Eventually, the camera must move away from the festivities and follow people into the more subdued aspects of daily life. It makes a grocery bag lighter. The rent is due. A person looks at the cost of cooking oil, returns one item, and continues to move. At the end of the month, a paycheck that seemed fair on paper can vanish quite quickly. Postcards seldom depict this aspect of life. Housing can be a major source of stress for many families. Even if a house is small, it still costs money to maintain it, keep it warm, and pay for transportation or electricity. There may be fewer employment options in smaller towns, which may require longer commutes or even moving away from home. The expense of distance comes next. From a mountain road, a village can appear serene. However, that tranquility has a cost if the closest university, hospital, or large market is several hours away. These days, a broken car is more than just a hassle. Missing a bus can result in missing work. Additionally, wages and prices don't always move at the same pace. You may witness someone working from dawn until dusk, then making a quick stop at a small store on the way home to purchase just what the family will need that evening. The scene is not dramatic in any way, not a single song, not a headline, just an individual performing the mental math. That's why it's harder to comprehend a place. The same nation that can provide stunning scenery, enduring family customs, and a slower pace of life can also require its citizens to be patient, selfless, and make thoughtful decisions. A simpler life may appear tranquil from the outside. You start to see the price of that simplicity from the inside out. However, there is something else worth observing beneath the stress of daily existence. The nation possesses something that cannot be easily imported. It could grow in forests, be carried by rivers, be buried beneath the earth, or be dispersed over seemingly endless mountains. It's the scenery itself in some places. In others, it can be a mineral, an energy source, a key location, or a generation-to-generation skill. Before anyone explains the potential, you can see it. A truck travels up a rugged mountain road. Beyond a village are fields. A river flows through a small valley. In the distance, machinery is already operating, and workers start before sunrise. This has some value, actual worth. This makes the following question challenging. Why isn't life easier if this country has so much? Rarely is the solution as easy as having resources or not. It's one thing to get something out of the ground. Another is to transform it into stable incomes, jobs, roads, schools, and electricity. Although geography can lead to opportunities, it can also increase the cost of transportation. Investment may be drawn to a valuable resource, but communities may question who gains from it. Culture has the potential to become a powerful economic force. A centuries-old festival, a distinctive landscape, or a traditional craft could draw tourists from thousands of miles away. However, travel offers its own options. To what extent should one share? What ought to stay local? And what happens when something very intimate turns into something that others are willing to pay to view? There are no simple answers to these questions. For now, the camera just observes. An employee completes another shift. A retailer shuts the door. The light fades and a road vanishes into the mountains. There is potential. The struggle is too. And this place's future is somewhere in the middle. Perhaps by focusing on a single family instead of maps, mines, and mountains, you can better comprehend that future. A small store's metal door is lifted by a shopkeeper just before dawn. It's still quiet on the street. He waits for the first customer, switches on the lights, and sweeps the entrance. An elderly woman makes a dish that she learned from her mother across town. She doesn't require a recipe, but her hands now move more slowly. She can tell by touch how much. From the other side of the table, a child observes and occasionally reaches over to assist. This doesn't seem particularly noteworthy. That's exactly the point. For individuals such as themselves, culture is not limited to holidays or special events. Work, meals, greetings, family disputes, and the small routines that make up a typical Tuesday are all intertwined with it. However, the world they live in is evolving. Young people migrate to larger cities. Some travel overseas. Old buildings are replaced by new ones. The way people work and communicate has changed due to phones. Jobs that used to keep whole families in one area might not be sufficient now. And at some point, a decision must be made: remain or go, with plans to start over somewhere else. A young person may pack a small bag, bid their parents farewell, and board a bus. Their parents might fully get it, they might even promote it. However, that silent question remains: when we're gone, who will be here? What these people are attempting to preserve is a link between generations rather than just an ancient custom. A father instructing his son in a skill that his own father taught him, a grandmother making a recipe correction. Every morning, a worker unlocks the same door. They have no idea what the future holds. They are only aware of what they wish to avoid losing. And sometimes that's sufficient to sustain a culture. Now that we've seen everything, the pieces start to come together. The old customs next to the new phones. The peaceful villages are encircled by challenging terrain. Families are watching their kids go after a long day. The employee is counting money. Even though they offer opportunities, these resources don't always make life easier. These things don't exist in isolation. Something more profound unites them: adaptation. For generations, the locals have learned to live with what the nation provides for them, and what it does not. When the roads are challenging, people find alternative routes. Families rely on one another when employment is scarce. Modern life is absorbed into older routines rather than merely taking their place if it arrives quickly. The contradiction we previously observed feels different because of this. Eating a traditional meal doesn't always mean rejecting the modern world. Leaving home does not always mean that a young person is abandoning their culture. Furthermore, a family that adheres to a long-standing tradition isn't always stuck in the past. They are attempting to stay identifiable while adjusting. Maybe that's also why some customs endure economic pressure. People may not have as much money to spend, but they can still eat together. They can still get together to celebrate. What a father learned from his father can still be imparted to his child. Those items are inexpensive. However, they have something that money cannot easily replace. The same instinct has been shaped by the mountains, the distance, the work, the traditions, and even the frustrations. Stay connected because life is easier when you don't face it alone, and all of a sudden, the nation appears different. Not less wealthy, not easier. Simply molded by a different set of conditions. The deeper narrative was never really about human existence. It was about how they came to live this way in the first place. And maybe there's no better way to comprehend this nation than by looking at something it once possessed and then lost. Imagine a scenario in which a typical road could transport more than just people and products, where families built their lives on a foundation they thought would endure for their offspring. Then the course of history shifted. A border shifting. A fight started. A choice was made far from the people who would have to deal with the fallout. Abruptly, a familiarity vanished. The signing of the agreement or the end of the fighting did not end the loss. It remained in family legends, in old pictures stored in drawers, in the names of locations that, despite being inaccessible, people could still recall. It was a personal memory for the generation that went through it. It became an inherited trait for their offspring. An elderly person may tell you about the past. Perhaps they stop the story in the middle. Maybe they point toward a direction that no longer leads where it once did. It's possible that the younger listener has never seen that world. However, they are aware that it was important. In this way, history is preserved. Not just in monuments or textbooks, but also in the little routines people maintain even after their circumstances have changed. The earlier contradictions start to make sense at this point. The obstinate customs, the reliance on family, how people use their resources with caution, the urge to go and the equally strong urge to stay. These are not arbitrary traits. They are reactions to a history that taught people not to take anything for granted. But there is also hope in that, because losing a portion of your history does not equate to losing who you are. People rebuild. Kids mature. Recipes from the past are prepared once more. Companies open in the morning. They still sing songs. The world is changing. And for some reason, people carry on. Perhaps that is the true story of this nation. Not that it made it through everything. However, despite all it had lost, it continued to find reasons to move forward. Perhaps living with less is not the lesson here. It has to do with knowing what is valuable. We frequently believe that living a better life entails having more, moving more quickly, making more money, and changing things that seem outdated. And it does occasionally, however. Witnessing people endure adversity serves as a reminder that progress always raises the question of what we are willing to give up. Financial hardship does not have to stop a family from protecting a recipe. It is possible for a young person to leave home and still retain its language, customs, and memories. A community can adapt to change without letting the familiar vanish. No matter where we are from, the majority of us can relate to that, because each person inherits something that cannot be valued in monetary terms. Perhaps it's a location, a custom within the family, a voice, a meal, a tale told to you as a child. Therefore, consider what you might be leaving behind before moving on to the next thing. And which would you pick if you had to choose between a more comfortable life and a life that kept everything that made your house special? Let me know in the comments. If this story changed your perspective on another nation or your own country, please subscribe and join us on the next adventure.